Help it, I just seem to see the world different. It ain't Republicans or liberals, it's mental illness. The internet is only interested in left opinions. Cancel culture's got more power lately than the First Amendment. If you don't like it, leave. We will not defund police. We don't want no riots in our neighborhoods or in the streets. We respect freedom of speech. We protect what we believe. We don't want nobody dead, so please do not tread on me. In America, your freedom ain't free. In America, got soldiers dying overseas. So America, say what we believe, my America, I won't ever take a knee. Our freedom is the reason you can disrespect our flag. If my stars and stripes offend you, then I'll help you pack your bags. America.
Good evening, everybody. I mean, this is like the third time we're doing this. Let's see if we can get this right now, because we're getting conflicted things. Some people say it's working, others say it's not. And just so you know, if you couldn't tell, this is the Corner of Church and State, and we are here again, and I am your host. I'm the weirdo with the beardo, Nolan Bryan, coming at loud and proud as I always do, and with this magnificence upon my face that keeps getting longer. The man to my left, who maybe you're hearing this again for the second time, or maybe you're not, or maybe it's the first time, but if you haven't noticed, over the weeks and months and even a couple of years, his hair has gotten whiter and whiter, and it's going to continue to do so. Why? Because he's my, well, one, I'm his best friend. So I mean,
no, that's not the reason.
Right there.
God.
No.
No, because of Democrats.
No, because he's a
just
pastor.
because of Democrats.
No. Say it right, because you're a pastor. And this is the one, the only Pastor Gary Podosek. And then the other man that you're hearing talking, he's behind the curtain, so to speak. He pushing all the buttons, sometimes the right ones, sometimes the wrong ones, sometimes forgetting.
Don't blame him for the button pushing this time.
Not on me.
Sometimes he forgets to plug the computer in that we're supposed to be running.
Not this time.
Not this time, though. But he is our very good friend, and he is our wizard behind the curtain. He is Steve Cattell.
Yeah.
How are you guys doing this week?
I'm here. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, good. Same. It's been a rough couple weeks, but it's good now, and that's all that matters.
For me personally, it's been a really good couple of weeks.
Yeah,
started
you
a
get
new
some
job.
good news.
Fantastic news, awesome stuff going on there. For other people, not so much. I mean, Christian schools not having a good couple of weeks.
Banks not
having a good couple of weeks.
Double hit by banks.
A mall in Delaware not having a good week. All because individuals whom we shall say like to have an alphabet around their name have decided that they want to go shooting things up.
I mean, look, you're stating facts. Unfortunately, the facts don't line well for a certain group that wants to politicize that. But I look at the fact that it's just a person did a horrible act. And much like you and me, we share the same thing. I'm not demonizing an entire group of people. I'm just pointing out the person. I'm pointing out a person did an evil act. Oh, and you know what I'm not doing, though? I'm not blaming the inanimate object that has no emotions, no spirit, soul. The gun doesn't do anything. It didn't do it. The person did it.
Technically, if you want to think about it, the bullet's the one that makes the hole.
Yeah, but the gun itself is not doing anything.
Ammo all you want, but
the gun didn't do it. Okay,
can do nothing.
So, and of course, these things immediately, once they happen, mainstream media gets up on their high horse about gun law and all this stuff needing to change. I'm wondering if they're just going to finally realize it's getting old and retire.
My favorite thing that has happened is back when granted, absolutely horrible what has happened. Look, I don't care who the shooter is. I don't care who. They shouldn't have done it. The only way to stop a shooter, and in every case, if there's an active shooter somewhere, that they are stopped the same way.
Yeah.
With another gun, whether it's they put the gun on themselves and commit suicide, or a good guy civilian,
good guy with a gun stops the person by shooting them,
or a law enforcement,
or they detain the individual by pointing guns at them.
Yes, I mean, there's still a gun involved.
It's really hard to detain somebody without some kind of thing to say, hey, by the way,
please don't do this.
Listen,
if you do anything stupid, these things will go boom, boom.
Yeah,
and
but at least,
your life will end.
But at least the Washington Post was ready right after the Tennessee shooting to have seven things
bad.
to put in their newspaper about
how AR-15s are bad.
They've been holding on to them for just such occasion.
By the way, the gun was not an AR-15.
Actually, the
one in the school was not. The one in the bank was.
They said that there was
the one in the bank was.
There was an AR-15, and then she also had a
the school but the one she used was a modified pistol.
Yeah. She still had it there.
Yeah.
She had a modified pistol with basically turns it into a rifle, and then she had her
pistol caliber though.
And she had a Glock or something, like 9mm of some sort. But either way, the two weapons she used were the two pistols.
Don't care.
But she did, and I'm okay with that. Actually, I'm happy about that. But that's
because they stopped that person from killing a bunch of kids.
Yeah, they weren't Uvalde. But anyway,
I mean. Well, we talked about this last week.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit, but it just it's like the hits just keep rolling in here, or the shots. I don't know which way you want to talk about it.
What are we talking about
this week? This week we are talking about the final week of Bring God Back. In this part, we're talking about bringing God back to the SCOTUS. And for those of you that don't know what SCOTUS stands for,
I did not.
Stands for Supreme Court of these here United States.
No, there's no H there.
There's no H.
You can't add a word to it. That's not how it works.
Why not? They're always adding letters.
I mean, not look, this one's already long enough, okay? We don't need to add more letters.
Joe Biden over here just making up stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, he probably thinks it stands for some kind of flavor of ice cream.
Different kind of chocolate.
I don't know. Whatever. But,
But yeah, we're going to talk, my again, reiterating the fact that my brother here wanted to do this series, and this was the final one. He's got some tidbits for us to talk about on how SCOTUS over the years has done some horrible things to in an attempt to destroy that which God calls good.
Well, we've talked about a lot of different things when it comes to the country. We've talked about how the country in and of itself has adapted more and more of these ungodly things. But what we really never talked about is where did it all come from? Because it's real easy for people,
The devil.
Well, no, I mean a lot of people get upset about the person of interest is always the president, right? Like, oh well, when this president was in office, they put in all these different policies, or they wrote all these different laws in effect and all this stuff, and it's like.
It was the lizard people in disguise.
You gotta look at things from the perspective of how our government works, and when you understand how our government works, maybe more so than other people, a lot of people tend to be like Steve behind the desk here, tend to just abscond themselves from the government because the government is just wicked, evil, and annoying, and I just pay my taxes and ignore them because I don't care about them. But the you pay your taxes. They just they're just giving you what you overpaid back. If you get a tax return, that's just because you gave them too much money. Which they
listen. No. You still don't pay your taxes. They go into your paycheck every week
from
and
you.
steal it from you every week.
Yeah. But what we realized is that we did a few episodes about this way in the Wayback Machine when we first started here about where all of the founding fathers came up with the historic documents that this country stands for. We talked about all that stuff, and then we went into even how the inner working of the government actually works. What the role of the president is, what the role of the Senate is, what the role of the House of Representatives is.
The current role of the president is to drink his prune juice and go to bed.
Well, again, but when you realize that each of these people have a specific point, and you have the three departments, right, which are what?
That would be the legislative, the administrative, Or executive.
Executive. Thank you. It's not
Executive.
called the administrative. The
Might as well be.
executive and the
Judicial.
judicial. Right. And so when you know what these three are, when you see them in the representation of our
the
U.S. government,
administrative is filled with
executive
the
branch.
handlers of
Executive
Biden.
branch is who?
That would be the president, the vice president, and his cabinet.
Right. Okay. The judicial.
That would be
our Supreme Court
Supreme
and
Court
the judges.
and all courts underneath that.
Yep, the judges. And then you have the legislative, which would be the Senate
House
and the House of Representatives.
Yep.
And so legislators are the ones who basically, as their term name points, is
They legislate
the law into the states and so that's why you have state representatives in the House of Representatives and you have state representatives in the Senate, because they are basically legislating on behalf of their states the laws that are being proposed.
The federal laws,
The federal laws, not state laws. Now, the executive branch exists for one reason and one reason only, and that is what?
To sign the documents.
That's it. Yeah, generally speaking, the president does not have a major role.
Here's this new bill.
And most people even think he's the one who can declare war. That is incorrect. The
Nope.
House of Representatives can declare war.
Senate.
Or Senate. I'm sorry. Senate declares war.
Senate declares war. House of Representatives. Oh no,
But-
Senate also for a lot of things.
The president is the commander-in-chief. So he is the one who gets to kind of make the says to the military branches and all that stuff as far as the actions that we're taking and what actions we are taking, which is why you can have like President Obama. And I didn't know about this. Did you know about this?
I don't know.
He's a Nobel Peace Prize winning president.
And he was the most violent one we had.
And he actually murdered a whole bunch of people during a wedding. It's a war crime in a foreign country. He murdered them, and children and everybody. I mean, just literally
Hey,
George
look,
strike.
say
It's
what
like,
you will.
I mean, I can't say he murdered them, but he issued the command. Again, I'm only saying this and bringing this up not because I want to demonize Obama, but I'm
He
bringing
did
it
that
up to
enough
point.
himself.
I'm bringing it up to point out that this is the role that the president actually has.
Yes.
And the executive branch also has the ability to write these retarded executive orders, which are, I believe, highly illegal in my opinion.
Well, here's the thing.
but-
Which the executive, when it comes to those executive orders, if the SCOTUS was doing their job, they could kibosh them really quickly.
Right. Which is why we're bringing up the Supreme Court today, because what happens is a lot of people don't really know what the Supreme Court even does. Or judges.
They wear
Like,
really cool robes.
You tend to think of them as judges, and you just kind of see judges in like television shows like Judge Judy or Judge Joe, whatever, Brown or whatever.
Judge Wapner.
Wapner, who we grew up with. Definitely Wapner. Got to be Wapner. Definitely Wapner.
Definitely time for Wapner.
Time for Wapner. It's a Rain Man reference if you don't know that.
Those of you who don't know that, go watch the movie.
When you look at the Supreme Court, though, the Supreme Court is really, really responsible for a lot of the ways the laws that we have are reinterpreted.
Notice he said
And in very important reasoning are what basically justifies all of the laws that we have in existence today. Your law technically comes from or exists from the Supreme Court. So why are we talking about them, and why are we saying, well, we need to bring God back into the Supreme Court? Well, that's going to be really a big part of this, because where we are at today is there's so many laws that have been enacted in the United States that are so anti-God. And
and don't forget the other thing is that up until recently, because again, we have there is a bit of a difference, and we will get to explaining why. Difference of the current SCOTUS and the SCOTUS of the last.
Well, they are individuals, which again has a lot to do with this.
But don't forget that for about a 20 to 30 year period, individuals, not going to name names or parties,
right,
used the Supreme Court, who is supposed to basically say whether or not a law is constitutional or not.
Right,
That's their job. They were using them to write new laws because they couldn't get them passed in this House or the Senate.
Right.
So they would just go to them and be like, we make it, judicial precedent that this is now constitutional.
Which is where you get the terms legal precedent.
Yeah.
Right. It's not technically the law, but it's considered what's known as legal precedent. And so with legal precedent, a lot of court cases get ruled based off of the legal precedent. So it's basically like this. If, let's say, somebody goes with a 9mm gun into a strip club and he shoots a stripper.
Was he playing Grand Theft Auto?
Hold on. I mean, that might be where he got his idea from. And he does this act.
Trying to get his money back?
Constitutionally speaking, okay, that man should be tried for what? Murder first degree, right? Now, if, however, in this court case, during the trial, something happens, whether it's evidence-wise, whether it's just some kind of mishandling of property or something that happens, and this guy does not get charged with murder, but he gets off on a justifiable cause. He literally killed somebody with intent, which would all in case be declared as murder.
Moida.
This ruling could then set a precedent for anybody to go in with a 9mm Glock and kill another stripper, because there's no, without definitive reasoning, if they don't have a shadow of a doubt reason as to why they actually ruled in favor, they set what's known as a legal precedent. Now, that's a really drastic rationale for this.
Probably wouldn't happen.
No. I mean, well, if the moral wrong or if the moral right of those who are determining that this is indeed wrong or right is so corrupted,
it could happen.
It could happen. Think of it this way. If you have a bunch of people who are now stating that, well, trans rights are human rights and they have their day of, vengeance or something like that, and anything goes, as long as you're trans, you can do anything you want to another human being, and there's legal precedent for them to get off scot-free, guess what you've done? If the Supreme Court rules in favor of that and sets a precedent, that means basically you can just go out, declare yourself to be trans, go kill another human being, and you're scot-free.
So what is one that's going on now that would?
So that's what we're going to talk about.
Talk about that.
So in order to better line this out, I'm going to bring up a bunch of history. Now, the history is going to be based off of these court rulings, and so court rulings generally are brought up by the two sides of the party, and the Supreme Court.
Quite a while to get to the Supreme Court,
right? It never ends. It never starts at the Supreme Court. It usually goes through minor courts and lesser courts and stuff like that. But then it moves up because the rulings are indecisive. So it means the case had something in it that
it's not
was
just indecisive. The lower court may
rule even one direction, way, but they
the
don't
other
get
person
the answer
will appeal.
they want. Right.
They'll appeal it and appeal it and appeal it.
Right.
Eventually, it'll make its way up to the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court, their job, they look at all these court cases that have come before them, and they can actually decide, yeah, we'll listen to that one. We'll listen to that one. We're not going to listen to that one. That was stupid. Get rid of that one.
Right.
Like, they choose what they listen to. So mind you, anytime they look at a court case, it's because they've chosen to look at it.
So the ones that we're bringing up now, mind you, this is not a thorough list, and believe me, there's so many court cases the Supreme Court looks at on a regular basis,
and a lot of them.
And you're talking about the existence of the Supreme Court from its inception and every ruling that they've ever made. I'm not doing an exhausted list here. Okay,
we'd be here for
it would take forever,
years.
and even that, most of these rulings, most of them are probably boring and non-important as far as what we would consider useful today. So what we've done, or what I've done, is decided to just pinpoint some ones that I believe are really critical for us as conservative Christian believers that are trying to put God back into these institutions, to see what has happened and what the absence of God. And again, I'm not saying that the people who are Supreme Court nominee or people who are in the Supreme Court now, I'm not saying pro con to any individuals. Like, I'm not pulling on an Amy Coney Barrett or anybody like that.
I'll throw some names out there.
You can throw the names out. I'm not picking on anybody individually. But what I am saying is
there was
that
the one that only got her job because of her skin qualifications.
What gets well, let's go into that real quick. How does the Supreme Court how do people get appointed into the Supreme Court? Because there's only a limited number of seats.
The president makes the president.
The president is the one who can nominate.
He nominates
persons to be there, and then they are basically interrogated, is the best way I can put it, by the House and the Senate.
the House Judicial Committee.
The House Judicial Committee and the representatives of that committee basically just kind of like they just riddle them with a bunch of questions to kind of
and
publicly humiliate them in a sense, usually because they either have a history as judges, because most of them are judges before, of rulings and things that they've done, and they basically call them out for their rulings and ask them why they ruled in favor of or against these certain things.
And then after that, then it goes to the Senate. The Senate votes.
And the Senate, if it's lopsided, will appoint a not so great Supreme Court justice.
Yep.
Or if the Senate is great, they will shoot down. So this is why the balance of power is important, right? If everybody was Democrat, right? If you had a full House of Democrats, you had a full Democrat president, Democrat Senate, they're going to go ahead and they're going to put any seat that is vacant in the Supreme Court. They will literally, this is why you hear they want to pack the courts, right? You've heard that before? Yeah. What does that mean? They want to add seats to the Supreme Court.
Right now there's 9.
Why?
Believe it or not, when the Supreme Court first started, you know how many there were? 3. Now there's 9.
So they keep.
They
now
keep
the reason
expanding.
why they want to do this is because, and again, what do they want to do? They want to be able to put in more of their type of people, judge that would rule in ways that they would want them to
rule.
rule.
Does it matter how many they put in there? Because once you're a judge till you either
die or retire. So Supreme Court nominees are not term limited.
Nope.
So they are there as long as they want to be, and they will usually be there for as long as they can be. So could you put term limits? Maybe. I mean, I don't know. That could fix it. Maybe not. But I look at this.
If you put term limits on it, then we should be the ones voting.
But this is why it's so important when you say, well, what is the president really important? Yes, the president is important. Why? Because he gets to nominate these guys. Why is it important to have a Senate that values things of God? Because they won't let people that don't into the Supreme Court.
Yep.
This is why these votes count. These are why all these different positions matter.
More importantly, why these votes count over.
Because you don't elect Supreme Court. You don't elect them. You never elect a judge. You will never elect a judge ever.
Nope. And
so
they need to be about
positions.
Trump, but the one thing that man
judges
did absolutely great was the judges.
He did a lot.
A lot of judges in this country, not just the Supreme Court ones, but a lot of judges he appointed in lower courts.
And that was why the Senate. And it was while the Senate was
Democrat.
Republican.
Or that too. Well,
we didn't have the House. We had the Senate.
That's right.
So could this be described sort of like in retail? Anybody who's worked retail before knows there's certain politics in there, whether it's hiring, firing, promoting, all that's done with whoever they like. It may not be the right person for the job.
Yes,
but it's
absolutely
the person who they want.
Yep.
And if most people are on that clique of people, then
they stick around.
They're going to stick around forever.
Yep. Yeah, it is unfortunately that kind of game,
and
it's not good.
And this is why, and I understand when people say why they don't vote or why they refuse to vote, and I understand why. I mean, it's a lot of stuff to keep track of. Sometimes I enjoy it. It's a hobby of mine. That's why I do it. Okay. I like to get involved. I like to debate. It's stuff that I like. But what it comes down to, the most important thing of it all, when it comes to the federal voting, is the court, the president.
This subject right here is probably the
most important reason.
Real important.
Because without
and you're gonna see why when I show you the things that are in here.
The list that he gave us that he wants to go over to today,
which probably made no sense to you when I put it up in the map. Yeah.
Zero.
Okay. Good. Good. Then you're gonna learn something today. And if anybody else who's watching learns something, I'll be happy about that. But at least one person's gonna learn something today. So I'm happy about it.
There's gonna be a lot of you people that are hearing some of these things for the first time, and you're just gonna go.
I'm like, Roe v. Wade. I'm like, I know that one.
But do you know that one? And that's going to be one of the ones.
Because there's also a part of it, because everybody says that it gave you the right to abortion.
It's not what it did. Right. It's not what it did at all. So, all right. So let's we're going to run all the cases first. These are the
historically bad cases.
These are the cases that, because of the nominees and the appointees of the judges at the time, and I'm not rolling years here. Please, if you want to look these up, go ahead, look them up, read them.
These are the ones that are still biting us in the backside today.
No, some of these were overturned, but I'm going to get to those too. So we'll talk about the wins afterward, but I want to talk about the shortfalls and where the Supreme Court, because it devalued the importance of God and it looked at state or man over God, it ruled these rulings in favor.
How dare you worship anything other than government?
And this is where we have started this downward spiral. And a lot of these rulings are a lot of the reason why you will find so many horrifically bad things that are in this country today. Let's start with Stone versus Graham. Stone versus Graham was the ruling that basically forced, and I'm going to just leave it at this. It's not exactly what I'm saying, but it is the basis of what they did. Removed the 10 Commandments from a lot of the government buildings in the country. Now, now there's certain places where you will still see like the imagery of Moses holding the 10 Commandments, but they're not listed on it. They're not written on the tablets. It's just blank tablets.
Oh.
You'll see on the doors of the actual House of Representatives, I believe, on the doors has tablets with the Roman numerals 1 and 5 on one, and then on the other door it's 6 through 10. Which one could assume is the Ten Commandments. But we also have our original 10 Bill of Rights. So because it's not listed on it, it's allowed. Yeah. The religious aspect of the 10 Commandments has been removed from everything. Okay. And now certain states like Texas, they have fought and kept that in the state rights ruling of the our 10th Amendment allows them to continue to keep it in their state. But the federal buildings, not allowed. So this has been
schools.
We're going to get to that one. We're going to get to that because that's another one. Okay.
Well, that also happened here because technically they considered schools. Public schools used to have things like, 10 Commandments.
the 10 Commandments and all kinds of Bible things and stuff. And all that stuff was chucked. The ruling basically said this: because of our country and our founding, it didn't attest to just a Judeo-Christian faith, even though the founders based everything off of Judeo-Christian faith. And the context of the religious prospect of our founding government was on Christian values. That was a fundamental principle. However, because of the freedom of religion to the populace or the people, they ruled this in favor because they felt as though this was an enforcement of religion from the government on the people, even though it wasn't. That was the deemed ruling, and so therefore they ruled in favor and pulled all of this stuff out. Now that was pretty much like the very abridged version, but basically this is one of the things that now
you wonder why kids are punching teachers in the face.
Well, that's not the thing, but this is one of the things that I go symbolically. This is one of the biggest pulls of the U.S. government stepping completely away from God. And I love doing this, but if you have a modern day quarter versus a quarter that I think is circa 1980 and like maybe in the 90s, but I think circa 1980 and back, you pull out the quarter. George Washington will be facing the same way, but "In God We Trust" will be facing. He'll be looking at the words "In God We Trust." Every quarter now, "In God We Trust" is behind him, and that really
that's real slick.
And so now, like it's stupid, simple stuff like that. But when you have made a determined effort to basically kind of thumb your nose at God as a governmental institution. Yep. God's not going to be really happy with your country. And so you're going to see a lot of things happen because of this. And so this is one of those, it's one of those marches where I feel like this is one of the stones that they threw, and it really was the snowball effect of the rest of these types of rulings. So when you see these other rulings, you're going to be like, when you started getting God out of the picture, of course, you're going to start leaning more to these types of things. So let's go to the bigger one, that one everybody knows, Roe v. Wade.
Yep.
Roe v. Wade is not abortion rights. It had nothing to do with abortion rights. It was just medical privacy care to women. And now you might go, well, how did that come into the abortion rights? Why did I hear about that all the time when women were fighting about their vaginas and it's my body, my rights, my choice, blah, 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 and how all this stuff steamrolled into this? Well,
it was the only way they could do it. It was the only way that they
could. The ruling.
It was the only way that they could make abortion legal was by saying that if you go to a doctor and have
you're talking about the legal precedent. Yeah. And this is where this comes into play.
If you go to the doctor and you want them to give you an abortion, then they have to keep it private, so then you don't get arrested. The doctor doesn't get arrested.
There you go.
There
you go. And so it set a legal precedent for protections against women and the medical institutions that perform these procedures to not disclose the procedure performed and keeping that information private. Now, on one side of this, you have to look at the reason and rationale why. Why? Well, because women's suffrage movement, women's had rights. This was a point where now women were given a lot of freedom and rights as men had at the time. And so this was a move in direction basically to kind of shelter that ability of having that role come back up again where men could dominate over a woman here in this particular category, where you can't get this medically necessary procedure done because I'm your husband and I said no.
Right.
So this was the separating from that and kind of getting away from that role of the husband lording over the woman type of thing. Women's rights. Now,
what women's rights? You got to tell me what a woman is now. Mind you,
biblically speaking, Adam and Eve, as the beginning progenitors of all human race, if you want to talk about it from that sense, God gave Eve to Adam, but he was responsible for her. And that's why even when I teach about the beginning in the garden, I always tell everybody, you need to read your Bible because everybody likes to blame Eve, but Adam was standing there watching the whole thing go down. He was responsible for her and her actions, and God held him accountable for it. God holds man accountable for the actions of their spouses, whether you like them or not. You may not agree with that fact, but that doesn't change the fact that that's the way God sees it.
Yep.
This was another thumb at the nose of God. So that ruling led to the worst one, which is the Planned Parenthood versus Casey.
Yep.
This is the Abortion Rights Act. This is the one that gave women the right to an abortion. This is literally what was killing babies in the womb. This is the murder ruling, period. End of story. This is the murder baby rule.
Before they were doing it,
it was under the guise of medically necessary procedure. Yep. So the
safe,
fewer safe, legal, and rare. That's what you heard from Clinton and all that stuff back in the day.
Yep, Clinton. She was putting double
Planned
shots in the back
Casey,
for suicides.
Yep. Planned Parenthood Casey was the ruling that basically gave women the freedom of basically flying their flag out in the public hemisphere. You could go and live a life of a night walker, get pregnant every week, and get that kid killed every weekend. And it was a cyclic process. And now I'm not going to get into the Planned Parenthood profiting off of this, even though whether you don't believe me or not, you can look that information up. That's public information. But they were selling baby parts.
They were the altars of Moloch. What the heck you?
But they were selling baby parts, and so it was a profitable ruling for them as well in the fact that they were able to continue going on with this.
And their founder wanted. I hate to say it for all you people.
Oh, it was to control the black population.
She wanted to get rid of as she called them, the weeds. She literally called black people weeds and said that they needed to be cut out. So I mean, and it's no surprise that most abortions are done in inner cities.
Predominantly
black babies people are the ones that are murdered. And it's absolutely sad because, we want to stop abortion because we want people to live. But
you're racist. That's why.
Yeah, because I want all babies to live.
So how long did that abortion, what was that, abortions up until when? Whenever.
So that's really good because again, here you go, legal precedent, right?
Casey did give the states individual. Well, they couldn't get rid of abortion.
This was the federally legalizing of abortions.
This was the federal legalizing.
So this was the one that federally legalized.
The states the rights to
determine to set their standards for it, but basically, no state could refuse. That's what that happened. So this is where states had to create a whole bunch of little monkey loops to basically try and make it as preventative as possible. But then you had states that were like super radical, like California, New Jersey.
Yep,
that would let you have it up to
every state that
birth.
every state that got too tight on the restrictions for it, they would immediately run them to the Supreme Court and go, it's going against your precedent. It's going against your precedent. You got to stop them, and they usually would stop the state. Because there wasn't the right justices in position.
Right. And this is why this is such an important thing, because here you have what was considered probably one of the worst rulings ever in the history of the Supreme Court, as far as the impact it had on human society, was ruled just because the leverage of power was Democratic.
Yep.
In the court. That's it.
Nothing
else.
The leverage has been to Democrats for a long time in the courts.
Yep, it has been. So not to really stay there for too long, because there's some positive news coming out from that afterwards, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But Obergefell and Hodges. This is the one that I don't like.
This is the one that aggravates me.
This is the one that gave the rights to men and women and women to marry.
Oh, wait, they'll be wanting to rewrite it soon so that you can have the it, marry, the thy, they,
well,
these,
so that's the kind of, well, that's kind of the comedic line now, because legal precedent, right? They have made a ruling that determined that gay men or gay women could now, same-sex marriage would exist. Now, Christians fought against this and they rallied against it, but because, again, we had no power in the Supreme Court at the time.
Let me get this straight. I just want to say one side thing on this, because I know a lot of Christians get a lot of hate because, you don't want gay people to get married. Okay, first of all, marriage is not a government institution.
Nope.
Marriage is not an institution that man has created. Marriage is something that God created between man and woman, period. Now, we used to have this thing called civil union that allowed you to have the same rights as a married couple. They just didn't call it a marriage, because a marriage was between a man and woman unto the eyes of God, like his proclamation.
You guys would have been fine with that.
It was already in existence.
It was already in existence. Oh. Okay.
This is why. So really what Obergefell Hodges did, and this is why this is such a bad ruling, is it really took, you want to talk about separation of church and state.
They ruled on a church.
This was exactly what separation of church and state meant, and they violated it.
Yep.
In ruling of an opposition to things that they would say was separation of church and state, which we're going to get to after this, that wasn't a violation of separation of church and state. That was actually the opposite. So here you have two rulings that talk about exactly what we say, this is what the name of the show is. Church and state is for this reason, because you have such a misguided understanding of what the letters were about, why the letters existed, and what the reason for the separation of church and state was. What did it exist for? It was so that the government could not walk into a church and tell them, this is now how you have to run your church. Right. These are what these words mean. These are what these things say. You don't get the freedom to worship. You do not get the freedom to do this stuff. This is why the COVID lockdowns were highly illegal, in my opinion. Not even in my opinion. That's just fact.
According to the Constitution, they were absolutely.
But when you get down to it, Obergefell Hodges broke this completely. It went to churches and basically said, you now, as a church, must legally marry a gay couple.
Yep.
Even though they know the context of your Bible states that is an offense to God.
Yeah.
They are forcing you to change how you operate in your belief system and your faith. That is why the letters were written. Ladies and gentlemen, please learn your history. Please read the letters. Learn why. It is not about the church telling the government what to do. It's not about the church being in school or the church or people praying in government buildings.
In fact, they wanted that.
That's not what it is. That has nothing to do with it. The church is welcome and should be welcome, because this is the crap that happens when the church isn't there.
Yep. And this is. And by letters, when he's talking about letters, we're talking about the letters that were written to our founding fathers. Because after our Constitution was written,
the Baptist, whatever.
Well, there was multiple of them. Okay, but yeah, I know
that's the one that literally was the church and state.
Well, no, there was more than just that.
But that's the one I'm talking about.
But each of our founding fathers, after the Constitution was ratified, even after it was ratified, something would come up. So some leader in an area would send a founding father a letter. They'd read it and they would quickly respond as to what their meaning was. Our founding fathers were not trying to hide anything. If you ask them a question going, did you mean this or did you mean that when it comes to the Constitution, they would write you back very point of factly, we meant this there. They were very, very...
It was simpler back then. This is true.
I mean, it was just that simple. I mean, I mean, even when Madison got the letter asking, can we have cannons? Are we allowed?
Yes.
Yes. By the Second Amendment, we are allowed to have cannons.
Yes, cannons.
What's the modern day equivalent to a cannon? A bazooka.
AR-15.
I rest my case. Where's my bazooka?
AR-15. Don't you know?
No,
I'm sorry. What did Joe Biden say was the deadliest? The
9 millimeter.
9 millimeter.
9 millimeter.
Blow holes through your chest, right? Yeah.
no.
That's not how it works.
Not even a
So,
9
Dad, what did you
millimeter
want? It seemed like you wanted to say something.
It was just a quick little lighten up part. So, you were talking about, how that changed, how everything, with the same sex marriage and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, I heard something before and I just thought it was funny. It's like, back in our day, all you had to do was teach your kids about the birds and the bees. Now you got to teach them about the bees and the bees and the birds and the birds.
And the bees that used to be birds and the birds that used to be bees. And the bees that want to be birds but have the bee parts, but they're still trying to pretend to be birds.
The bee that used to have a stinger but now doesn't have a stinger.
Exactly.
No, yeah.
But now they want to be with the birds and the bees and exactly. Yeah.
It's quite.
And somewhere there's a moth in there. I don't even know. It's confusing now.
Fire.
It's just so confusing. No, but you know what though? This is the reason why I get upset about this specific ruling is because it generally, and now mind you, our church is
You know why he gets so upset about it? Because he's the one that could end up in jail for it.
Well, right. I mean, possibly, but. What happens here in these particular cases is you're looking at this violation and you're seeing the devaluing of the church's actual rights and whether the church actually is a valued system in our United States government anymore.
Oh, it's supposed to be.
Well, it was, but it's not anymore. No, it's not. We're not valued. We aren't valued. Well, no, as an institution, we're not valued.
You know what's sad?
I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm going to correct my statement. I'm going to rescind that. In blue states, you are not. Because you go into the Bible Belt, you are 100% welcome.
The problem is with the churches in the Bible Belt, like the certain Southern Baptists, and I'm talking to you, now they want to get trans people to be in charge of their...
I didn't say they were all perfect either. I'm just saying.
Look, I'm just saying they want to teach CRT. They want to teach CRT and how trans are just as valued as everybody else.
So, I mean, all these little things, like all these cases that you're talking about, they're all just leading like little bit out, just like a little bit out.
All right, so but here, think about it.
Now it's just leaving it open for more.
But you're right. So now here you go, right? So here you go. Let's talk about that. Gay marriage, right? Okay, maybe you are a more modern day, church guy, and you believe that, love is love and you can find love in all these places, whatever. I'm not saying I'm that guy, but I'm just saying, let's say you are that guy.
Dude,
I
know that ain't you.
Stop. I am saying that there are indeed people out there, pastors and churches, that do have this mindset.
Pastors. Yep.
Here's the problem. Even if you say, okay, I'm on board with that. All right. But a legal precedent has been set.
Which now they can start to let...
What are you going to do when they come in with a 12-year-old little girl and a 40-year-old man?
Yep.
And they say, well, you have to marry them. And you
love.
know that 40-year-old man is going to do some of the most heinous things to that little girl in unimaginable fashion, and it's going to be protected under the marriage bed covenant.
Lock me up.
See what I mean?
Lock me up.
But you gotta understand why. So how can I say, well, that's so? And I'm gonna go. All right, go ahead. Hit me up in the chats, please. Email this guy. He'll send them to me. I'll run them back in your throat. Why? How can I say that? Well, I don't know. Gee. Well, only until recently have you ever seen drag show performers in churches performing in over 21 establishments to children. So don't tell me, they're not interested in the kids. Oh no, they very much are interested in the kids. 100% interested in the kids, as a matter of fact. And hear me out. You've talked about it. That alphabet's going to get a P soon.
Another P.
What are you going to do when that other P shows up? Are you gonna change your alphabet rules? Are you gonna eat your own? I don't know. I don't know what you guys do. I don't know how you handle things over there. It's weird.
Well, when they disagree with people, like the old school lesbians and gays, the ones that only want to be with women, lesbians who only want to be with women, and the men that only want to be with men, they're kicking them out of the alphabet mafia because a lesbian won't accept a trans woman that used to have a penis.
No, I'm just saying.
Won't date somebody.
But this is what happens.
They can only be with women. They're just as bad as us cis people now.
This is
I love it.
This is what happens when you open these doors.
Yep.
And so a legal ruling
doors for 1% of the 1%.
But a
of the
legal
country.
ruling like this is that dangerous.
Yes.
And whether you could say, "Oh, I'm crazy.
It's
I'm
a slippery
wrong."
slope. It's a really slippery slope.
I hope I am. I sincerely hope that I am.
This is one of those
but
cases
I'm
I would love to be wrong.
terrified that I'm wrong.
Right.
You mean that you're terrified
or that I'm right? I'm terrified that I'm right.
I'd rather be wrong.
I want to be wrong,
Yeah.
but I'm terrified that I'm right because I know how our government works, and I know how they like to continue to just stretch things as far as they can.
You know what it really has been a nail in the coffin because you didn't put years next season. I know.
No, I did not. And that's why I said you could do the years if you wanted to.
They're not in order, but really the linchpin, the two biggest things that one, you've already brought one of them up, was taking the Ten Commandments out of buildings. So taking God's commands out of the forefront of people's eyes. The next thing, the next linchpin that was like the big slam in the face is the last one on your list.
The Stone Graham was 1980, by the way.
The Engel Vitale. Which removed prayer from schools.
Yep.
Oh. I mean, next thing you know, they're going to take priests out of the hospitals because that's forcing God into the hospitals.
this specifically, Engel Vitale, why this one is also a greater.
Let's make it very clear. Every football team that does a prayer before and after games has been fighting this stupid thing.
Which, by the way, I just want to be clear. Why do they do that? Did you ever wonder why they do that? Why in high school football they're praying in their coaches' circles and the team's praying? Do you know why they do that?
For safety, usually.
No.
Oh.
Do you know why?
Why?
They're mimicking the professionals.
Because
the pros do it.
Yep.
They're just modeling what they're seeing before them.
This also got rid of it. Like you couldn't do the benediction prayer.
Hold on. And I just want to say this because I am not a fan of the NFL anymore. But as woke as the NFL has gotten, they're still letting that happen.
That one guy got injured in Buffalo, the Buffalo player?
Yep.
Injured
Everybody.
Both teams were on their knees.
I honestly think the entire stadium was in prayer, okay?
Yeah. And everybody,
one dude,
the biggest atheists in the world, were on Twitter going, please pray, please pray, please pray.
Yeah.
You know what? All right, well, now that a gun shooting has happened, what?
Just out of curiosity, I just want to answer that one.
I'm praying too. Like, who do you believe in today?
Pray. Who? It's like,
But yet, prayers are okay then, but not when you want to pray for the family that just got shot up.
By the way, he got better.
Now, hold on. Now, Engel Vitale.
Don't get me started on that conspiracy theory.
All right, so hold on. Engel Vitale. Okay. All right, because I want to move. Engel Vitale, what is the ruling? What happened? All right, well, at the time, and this is back in the 60s, so you're talking about a way back time from now.
Man.
Back in the 60s, what was common at this time was that schools would open with prayer and then the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Now, and the prayer was very generic. It wasn't over.
And they would also sing, "This land is my land."
Right? And so schools were basing this off of the fact that, again, where did this principle come from? Our founding fathers. What did our founding fathers create this nation off of? Again, we've been through this thousands of times. So schools,
Muslims did not help create this.
Public schools were adapting this because they were a fundamental building block in educating our children.
The public school system was created by a church.
No. I know. I'm not.
That's why they were doing it.
Yes, but they were a product of the government that at the time embraced the values of God and embraced the founders of the country and all this stuff, and they're teaching the children about the history, about the founding fathers, about it. So they were obviously incorporating it into the schools. It's a part of like the
everyday life.
Reason why you do this is because it helps you to remember, right? Why did you recite your ABCs all the way from kindergarten into third grade? Because you needed to remember them. I know. I can't tell you. I guarantee you. Ask a kid today how many letters are in the alphabet. They wouldn't give you the right answer. No, without having to sit there and count every letter of one of their fingers.
So true.
Wait, what are you talking about? Ask them to write a complete sentence, to text a complete sentence.
Oh, yeah, without having to abbreviate the word.
Without abbreviating words. It ain't going to happen.
But this is my point, right? This is the dumbing down of America system, right? But, okay, why did they do this? What was the reason for the ruling? Because they believed that this was optimally favoring one religion over the many. And because you were then possibly having other nationalities and ethnicities and belief systems coming into the public school sector.
Can I squash this one?
Squash it? What do you mean?
Because I love it when people go, oh, but America has freedom of religion, and therefore all religions are accepted. Wrong. I'd just like to tell you that every religion that isn't a Christian religion, according to our founding fathers, was not a religion. It was a cult, and it was wrong. So when they said freedom of religion, they actually meant freedom of denomination when it came to Christian faith.
But it doesn't matter because the Engel Vital ruling, again, by sets of judges that were put in place,
morons.
Okay, at the time, interpreting the law and the Constitution,
can't read.
Then interpreted the constitutional ruling of the freedom of religion to basically state that this was giving specific religious choice versus freedom for all religions. Okay, legal precedent. What did they do with this? Well, not only did they just ban anything Christian in schools completely at this point, because you walk in with a Jesus T-shirt, you'll get sent home.
I remember being
literally you'll get sent home.
Saved, bringing my Bible to school in my book
can't
bag,
do that.
Not even carrying it out front.
Can't do that.
Bring it. I got the ability to do so. I argued that one.
But can you wear your yarmulke in school? Yep, you can do that. Can you go to the special room that they've put in your public school for you to go and pray to Allah in? Yep. They did
Can you
that.
wash your feet in a public sink?
Yep.
Can you
do that? Yep. Can you wear a headdress if you want to?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
A hijab, whatever. Every other religion, other religion, but not Christianity. So wait a minute. How did that come from
Because
here?
they're favoring all of them over the one.
No, that's not the reason.
They're trying to get rid of the one.
Nope, that's not the reason either.
Oh.
It is basically a form of racism.
Yep.
In the exact opposite direction. They basically are ruling this way because they believe, well, you've had the torch long enough. Now let other people have their time in the sun. And that's basically what it is. Now, whether I think it's absolutely asinine that they can even get away with it. I think it's absolutely absurd. So this particularly, okay, is a problem because we are now seeing how these, and you can see, and even if you're not following along, well, then go do some more research because I really think you'll be understanding when you see that this can damage a society absolutely, and overthrow it completely.
Oh, yeah.
Each of these rulings are just so saboteur in their nature. And the one, again, we think the gay marriage one is so bad is not because I don't like gay guys or gay women or whatever. I love all people. I'm not against a person because of their sinful actions. God says love them. Hate the sin, love the sinner. So I'm not hating a personal group of people because of their sexual preference. But what I'm seeing,
what it can lead to.
What I'm seeing is how the government has decided to do something that can create something far worse than what they maybe intended with their original.
Oh, no. They intended.
No, I don't think. No. I'm going to tell you. I honestly believe that the judges that ruled in favor of Oberfeld Hodges did not rule with the thought of, oh, there's going to be 40-year-old men with 10-year-old little girls. I'm sorry. I don't think they did. Yay!
Maybe we're back.
Maybe it wasn't then. All right.
Oh darn. Well,
We'll get to the good.
darn. Man.
So let's get to the good news because I don't want to take up too long. But there isn't a lot of good news.
There's
some, but not a lot.
And a lot of it's recent.
So, and it is recent. So, most recent is the obvious one that everybody knew about. We talked about it. We had a whole episode about it. We were hooting and hollering. Stone versus Graham. Stone versus Graham was literally the ruling of, I'm sorry, not Stone versus Graham. I'm sorry, Dobbs versus Jackson.
I'm about to say Stone
I didn't scroll up. Dobbs versus Jackson is the one everybody knows. If you're not sure what it means, Dobbs versus Jackson was the ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood and Casey. So it didn't just overturn Roe v. Wade and not Casey. It overturned both. Now, why is the overturning of both important? Well, people were like, well, they should have overturned Casey but not Roe v. Wade. Well, no, because both were unconstitutional because they both violated the 10th Amendment.
Yep.
That's why they ruled the way they did. The ruling of the 10th Amendment is giving rights to the states. So the states cannot be federally bound to something to their group of people that's not in Constitution, right? And so because they were given something that is not constitutionally available by any law in the Constitution, they were given something then told by the federal government to enforce by state law. This was them basically rewriting the Constitution through Roe v. Wade and Casey to give women rights they didn't technically have because they have specific rights and freedoms under the Constitution as a human being, right? As a human being. So, like one would say, oh, well, what about slavery? Okay, but slavery was abolished. So now you're a human being. So any person, regardless of their skin color, has the same rights as every other human being in the state of this country.
And one of those rights is life.
So guess what? You do not get to remove those rights from the states. And so what this did is this overturned technically, and that's why I say it's a small win, overturned it back to the states. Now, why did I say small win? Well, if you live in a blue state like this one,
or California,
nothing changed.
California's putting an express
You
lane.
can still murder babies here. Sorry, if you
California,
thought, that's a big deal.
California's like, hey, you gave birth to that baby, but now you don't want him. We'll help you out.
So California, obviously, New Jersey still sucks when it comes to this. Other states that have abortion
codified
laws,
it now.
Virginia, I know but it doesn't matter.
It's codified in our state.
In our state, it doesn't matter. It's the same way you can get things like this overturned from a federal line. You can do that in state lines.
No, it's harder.
So
it's harder
when it's codified. But if you have no legal precedent, you can't keep it. So again. Yes, because of a dumb governor who thinks he can do stuff like that, that's great. But when you get a governor who knows something and maybe knows a little bit more about law, turns around and goes, hey, by the way, you didn't do that legally. It's invalid. Okay, moving on. Because most of the stuff, by the way, if you're not clear and you're not sure, most of the stuff Democrats do is illegal. They don't do it by the law.
Not all.
They find ways around the law or loopholes that they like to get on other people about using loopholes.
What's the Manchin? Manchin's pretty. Most of the time, he's a good guy.
Yeah, but like I said, most Democrats usually are manipulating the law in some form or fashion. But so Dobbs versus Jackson was a small win because again, states that are red now can turn around. Like what state was it that literally just put the kibosh on it completely? Ohio. Was it Ohio? I thought it was
more than just Ohio.
But a couple of states just literally like, no, we're done.
Ohio said that the only way you can do an abortion
medically necessary by the doctors,
and then it's not considered an abortion if it's a medically necessary procedure,
which is the way it should have been from the beginning.
I forget what it's called, where
because the women were screaming in the streets, "You're going to kill us!" Like, no, it never would happen. That was never the case.
You've been raped, quite literally, if a woman gets raped and she goes to the hospital. Number one, she could tell them if she was raped. Never have to give her name. Never have to do a.
They would do a test to prove that she was indeed.
No.
They do. They do have a test.
They do a rape kit.
Well, no. Well, they would do a rape kit, but
just a test.
They wouldn't even do a pregnancy test.
No.
What they would do is they would go right in and scrape the uterine walls out,
and that's it.
And that's the end of it.
That's technically an abortion.
Technically, that would be an abortion, but it's not because it's a medically necessary procedure. Also, like
for psychological purposes, by the way.
So I didn't even know that was a thing that you could.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If you were raped, then you could go.
And hold on. You know why you don't know that?
Because they
won't tell you that. Because they want you to think that that's not the case, so they can write garbage laws like that.
Then the other thing is that say I forget what type of pregnancy it's called, where the basically the
mother would die.
The embryo is stuck in the fallopian tube.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Which could kill the mother.
I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
But if it could kill the mother, it's not considered an abortion then. Because then it's the mother trying to survive.
Correct.
And it's considered a medically
and
necessary
any doctor
procedure.
who has a good doctorate degree would highly advise that the mother.
Because usually in those cases, both will die if you try to keep it
Correct.
going.
Right.
Okay.
And so they will say it is a medically necessary procedure. I know you really want to try and keep your child, but if you do not do this procedure, you will die and the baby could die too.
Now there. I mean,
Sorry.
I can give instance after instance on this, but you getting pregnant because you wanted to have coitus without any protection that is very easily able to get. You can get
Which most places give it to you for free.
Most places give it to you for free.
Planned Parenthood, you can get it for free.
Like that's a good reason for them.
Yeah,
correct.
you can get it for free, but you choose not to do it because you whatever reason, and you get pregnant, and now you want to use abortion as a birth control. That's not a medically necessary procedure.
Right.
That is you are now raising a child.
So
Because you made the grown-up decision to have fun and not take into account repercussions.
Yep. So other good news.
This
Kennedy
is a really good one.
versus Bremerton Public School. This was a big win.
He's still stomping on their throat after this one.
So there was a court case that came up where a coach of the Bremerton High School or whatever prayed. I think it was after the game.
It was
if I'm not
after the
mistaken,
game.
right? It was after the game.
He didn't make any players come out
He
with
didn't.
him.
He just
went out by himself,
and prayed.
and other players came out with him.
That were also believers.
And it wasn't
And it wasn't even. And it was, by the way, both sides. It wasn't just. It wasn't. It was not on just his team. It was other teams.
It wasn't even
Coordinated.
Nobody
it
at the
wasn't
Bremerton
planned.
school complained about this.
Nobody.
Do you know who complained about this? The sports writer who was there covering the game.
So it came out, and then basically this thing went to court, and
They fired him.
They fired him.
They fired him first, and then it went.
They fired him because they didn't like the lashback, and apparently this violated what the previous ruling that we talked about, Engel Vitale rule. So because of that, they were lynching him basically across the board, and a lot of things came up. So the regular court ruled against him and basically continued the sentence, to which they wrote an appeal. Then the appeal went all the way up to the Supreme Court.
And the Supreme Court heard it.
The Supreme Court, this was one of the very first when they had their, I think.
Well, the big one was Dobbs Jackson.
But then this one was right after it. And they ruled in an overturning of the previous ruling, which basically now sets legal precedent against Engel Vitale.
That prayer is covered by the First Amendment.
It is a First Amendment right of a citizen to have freedom of speech.
Now,
and that speech, whether it's spoken or unspoken, is presentationally allowed. You're not allowed to remove that right from a citizen of this country, period. End of discussion. And that ruling was indeed ruling against the freedom of speech. This is why this one's so huge, because in a time now where we feel like freedom of speech is so heavily under attack.
Yeah. Which looks like we may have been.
which is possible. And again, also, hey, look, reality is that it is indeed under attack. It is really under attack.
It's also why they're coming after our guns, because that is what we use to protect our
First Amendment right. So we have the rights we have because we fight to keep them. But when we fight to keep them. But when we get a guy who, lost his job as a coach, didn't do anything wrong, just prayed, it's
thanking God that nobody got injured in the game. Thanking God for a good game. Like
it's not like he went out there, praying to Allah, and that the infidels on the other side would be smited and their bomb and their bus would blow up. Come on, have some room of understanding to what the differences are. But the guy literally, and again, if you're going to stand on this First Amendment right, does a Muslim coach have the right to go and pray to Allah in a game? Sure does.
Yep.
I don't have to agree with his religion. I don't have to agree with what he says. He has the right to do it in this country. And I'm sorry,
alone.
You don't get to tell people they don't. And so this was a great ruling. This one was the one I think is probably the biggest win out of this current Supreme Court. Yeah, the stopping the baby killing is great. But that really
it
didn't stop it. It just minimized it because now the red states could literally just go, okay, we can stop all this.
California
murder.
telling other states, look, we'll send you a free pass.
Then you got states that are literally telling they're going to shuttle you over to kill your baby in our state. You know, they're like, what do they call them? Like sanctuary cities for abortions. Like, are you kidding me? Yeah. Are you serious?
These states.
So you know what? You know what? All right, fine. You want to do your sanctuary cities for aborting babies? All right, red states, sanctuary cities for praying in public, sanctuary cities for
guns,
concealed carry law, that you can bring your gun over to our borders whenever you want. No paperwork, no nothing. Just come on over. You know, if they want to do sanctuary cities, then I think it's about time. And you know, look, is this going to be a civil war issue? I don't know. Maybe. Who knows?
No, but
I think World War III will happen before we have a civil war.
National divorce.
No, I just think World War III is going to happen before that. But that's besides the point.
Oh, that's going to happen in a couple weeks.
I got to stop listening to Alex Jones. I'm just saying.
It's going to happen in a couple months with Taiwan.
China's going to invade Taiwan. I'm just going to let you know. That's just going to happen. Okay. I mean, they're already swarming. They already got the blockade.
China's got the frogs.
In a couple months, we're going to be over there. There's going to be World War III. All right? I mean, listen. You know, we talked about the Supreme Court, and I hope that informatively, you know, everybody gets a good idea of why this is important. But when we're talking about bringing God back, this is why votes count. This is why who you vote for matters. This is why voting for your senators matters. This is why voting for your president matters. Yeah, most of the time, is he just a puppet? Yeah, I mean, he is technically, especially when he's a brain dead one. But the guy has the power. The guy has the power to nominate Supreme Court justices to fill vacant seats. And lower court judges. And these are the people, and, you know, your district attorneys and all this stuff come into these places.
Soros does that.
No, the district attorneys come into these places of power, which is why Soros is doing this, because DAs become judges most of the time. So you flood the DAs
surprisingly enough,
with a bunch of judges. These are how you get liberal judges into the market.
Your heads of colleges usually have a judicial background,
so
they end up becoming judges later.
So this is why it's important to we can't stop people from trying to become a judge, and I'm not trying to either. Not saying we need to live in some kind of like police state where we're restricting who can be what, you know, put laws on people that can't have certain jobs or whatever. No, because then they'll do it to us. Come on now. You know how the law works. But I just talked to you about how it works. So hear me out. But what you do get to control, and your voice can be heard, is when you elect the officials who get to control whether or not they get that final seat.
Yep.
And when you see what the final seats currently have made. And by the way, we don't have like a majority of the Supreme Court, by the way. Roberts is
flaky.
He could be one or the other depending on which way
he has been one or the other.
So he's
a swing judge.
It's not necessarily
Wouldn't mind making him a hanging one.
Hey.
That's how you get kicked off.
That's how you get banned.
Dumb.
He didn't mean that. That was just a catch a phrase.
He wants to hang with him, is what he was saying. He wants to hang with him. He wants to hang out with him.
Like their buddies.
Like you hang a pinata and beat the crap out of him.
I mean, look, you can hang him by suspenders or something. That's fine. I don't care.
Hang him by his britches.
That's fine. Give him a giant wedgie.
An atomic wedgie.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Atomic wedgie.
Also,
it's fine.
We were talking about the last part of it, about how big of a win this is.
Oh, my bad.
The best thing about it is, for me, the way I think of it is it's hard to really put into words, but it's kind of like everybody thinks that the Christians are a certain way, one way or another.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're against this, no, we're against that, blah, 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 blah.
Well, we probably are.
On some things we are. But like you just stated, you know, if a guy wants to go out and pray, that's great. That's what we want to continue. We're not against the other people wanting to do their prayers.
Right.
We just want everybody to be able to do.
And again, go back to the school ruling.
Freedom.
I don't care that they changed the ruling about no prayer in school or no prayer in school. Okay. But you didn't do that. You allowed every prayer but Christian prayer in school.
So we just want the rights.
I'm like,
as everybody else.
As I say this, and I know a lot of other guys who are out there say the same thing. Look, I am not sitting here. The simplest form of saying this is that this works when it's equal rights applied equally.
Yes.
When it's applied equally, then we're good. When it's not applied equally, that's when you're catching all this
I'm a bit of a
lashback.
traditionalist. I say we go back to the way the founding fathers wrote it, which was anything that doesn't have to do with Christianity or God is a false religion and therefore not allowed in this country. Just like France doesn't like.
You better submit that.
Huh?
You better put that in the documents so that people can research that and find that out. Because I'm not riding with you on that one, brother. I know what things say. There's a little bit of interpretation there. Just
like the French, they don't recognize Scientology. They think it's a cult.
Look, well, it is a cult.
Well, here in America, it's a religion.
No, it's not. It's a cult. Nobody calls it a religion except Tom Cruise. I don't even think he calls it a religion anymore. So anyway,
if he doesn't call it a religion, his handlers will beat him.
Look, anyway, the reason why this one I felt was really important, we saved this one for last, was because this is kind of one of those tipping points where maybe you don't vote and you don't think you should. But here's one of the reasons why.
You should, and it's a very big reason.
Because these are the impacts
for no
that you
other
could.
Reason, this is the reason.
This is one of those impacts that you deal with on a regular basis that you actually have the voting power to change. This is one of them.
Next time we adjourn, there'll be lots of discussions about something like that.
Exactly.
Well, we'll see. Because the reason why he's saying that is because in 2 weeks.
Yep.
What's today's date? I always forget. Today is
the 11th.
The 11th. So in 2 weeks, which would be the 28th, our next episode will basically. I mean, we got to work out a name because if I say Politics for Dummies, I think that's a book and that's trademarked. And
I'll look it up to make sure it's not a.
But
how about we just do Steve's political questions?
Well.
Because that's pretty much what it is.
Politics for dum-dums. I don't
Politics by Steve.
Steve wants to learn about politics is really what it is.
There you go. Educating Steve on politics.
Steve is going to put together
session for politics.
Steve is going to put together a list of questions and he's going to present them to us, allow us to get our answers.
And if you guys have questions too, submit your questions.
Please feel free to email us. It's all in the link tree. You can just click on it, go to the email address. You could even post it in the comment on this. We do check it to see who's been watching.
Yep.
So if you post it in the comment here, we'll get back to it.
Yep.
And there's also follow me on Twitter, which I'm probably gonna end up getting rid of.
Twitter's not that bad anymore.
Not that
just
bad.
not really great.
No, I got flagged. I got put in Twitter jail
again.
Yeah.
Well, you stop doing things that get you put in jail.
Current thing because apparently what I said to.
Did you say something violent?
Hanging somebody. I don't want to hear it. I don't know what I could have said.
No, he didn't say he said he's hanging somebody. He just said he wants to hang with them.
I may have said typed a few expletives and then the
now he just outed himself to his pastor. I'll talk to you later.
I may have said a few expletives and then ended the sentence with the word retard, and that may have brought it on.
Use your brain. You know that ain't gonna pass.
I'm sorry, the senator was an idiot, and I had to turn it. Oh, it was a hard R.
You could have left it with idiot. That was fine.
No.
Dumb, moron, buffoon. There's tons of words. It's not a hard R.
No. His whole thing with the shooting.
Look, I understand. I get it. You let them trigger you too much.
But anyway. So Steve is going to pose us some questions. We're going to answer them. If you have any, please put them in the comments here, or email us, or put and also share it, because if you've got people that may have similar questions, I mean, I realize you won't know the exact question Steve's going to ask, but let's just go with the idea that Steve doesn't understand a lot of things politically, so he is asking us questions to understand.
Did you learn something today?
I did learn something, especially about the big thing for me. I think was the abortion when it came to rape. Like, I had no clue about that. That is a huge thing because so
that's
many
what they
women
throw at you all the time.
Yep. Oh, but so you're just gonna allow a baby to get a person that got raped? Maybe they were 12 years old and they can't. Blah, blah, blah. No.
Parent can take them to the doctor. Shoot, the
12-year-old. Whoa. They could go without their parent.
Yeah. I was raped. I was molested.
They don't need their parent for that at all.
Yep.
And that's amazing because that's something that you don't hear about. I mean, I've heard
they don't want you to hear about it.
Now, I will say this though: in certain states,
they
right?
will report it to
like
the cops.
in this state, they will not. They will not tell anybody. They will let that person go in, get the procedure done. That's it. No questions asked. Give you a little business card out the door. You can come back later, frequent flyer miles, get your stamps. In this state, they'll do that.
One, you get a free one.
But no, they're all free. The government's paying for them. Are you kidding me? You're paying for them all, you dumb. All right. So, however, in certain states, in certain red states, however, they may call your parents if you're underage. They may call a police officer.
No, they will call the police.
Well, in certain states, or they will put you to a police counselor because they believe that this is something, again, where red states get flagged for all these abortion restrictions and all their stuff, and blah, 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 right? Okay. But look at what they're doing to help them after.
Yep.
Right.
Look at all the things they're trying to do to help the person recover, help the person get on the right track, help the person not end up.
They won't talk about those
in the hardship of these things.
That's what Planned Parenthood really should.
That's what they should be doing. You're right, but they don't.
But that's what they probably would be doing
because they make money off of baby parts.
No, they probably would be doing that. That's true. Listen to what I'm saying. They probably would be doing that if they were not founded by a communist, racist,
but that person doesn't even exist anymore.
But they still go off the tenets.
But I understand. But Sanger's dead, so she doesn't get anything out of it. But they do get profit off of baby parts, and that's why they still do it.
How do you think they got the COVID vaccine?
Anyway,
next episode.
Should I burst a bubble?
Yeah, now you got us banned. Probably we're probably banned for life from that comment.
Anyway, so follow the link tree. You know where to go.
If you need prayer, please comment. Give us your prayers. Let us know. We'll pray. We have had a lot of things coming through recently with a lot of people having all kinds of stuff going on. Pray. We have some good victories of people that have asked for prayer, and we prayed, and things have turned up. We talked about our brother here with the job better place, which is great. It's awesome. So the power of prayer is really awesome, and the fact that you can do this now in school is great.
Yeah, right. And also,
you can pray for that math exam.
Oh,
you pray the teacher changes that B to an A.
Say that my parents don't notice that I changed it from a B to an A.
I don't know if he's going to help you on that one.
But big thing, you guys, I need you to continue to share this, continue to get it out there. We've been growing rather steadily on the audio aspect of this. We'd like to see it grow more on the YouTube. It's
more on Rumble than YouTube, please?
Yeah, Rumble as well.
Please.
I mean, because eventually, even if we got to millions of followers on YouTube, we'd be like, all right, now let's go to Rumble.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could
might as well just start on Rumble.
Go to Rumble.
Not pay anything to the YouTube gods.
Also, if you happen to be in South Jersey on a Sunday and you need a place to worship, and you want a place to worship, in that link tree, there's our website to our church, and you can get the address to our church, and we start.
I don't like that website.
I know you don't.
I don't like it.
It's getting work.
I need a web designer to help.
Okay. And if you're
a web designer in the
South
Jersey area, or a drummer in the South Jersey area, please come our way.
Please contact me.
Or a guy who can fix visual tech that we have.
Hey, I did that. That's me. I fixed it.
Mr. All Thumbs over here. It was a lick and a promise to fix it.
It worked great.
Hey, it works. Don't complain. Okay?
But anyway, we start. Well, I'd say we start promptly, but that's not always true. But we start 10-ish. And we would love to have you, love to worship with you, love to pray with you, and love for you to hear what this man and other people are preaching in the pulpit, what they are preaching and teaching from the Word of God.
Amen.
So this has been the Corner of Church and State, where we have been going through all this stuff. And we look forward to seeing you here.
Still no separation.
There's still no separation. We look forward to seeing you here in 2 weeks. So y'all have a good one. Have a good night. God bless.
Amen.
Peace.
Can't help it, I just seem to see the world different. It ain't Republicans or liberals, it's mental illness. The internet is only interested in left opinions. Cancel culture's got more power lately than the First Amendment. If you don't like it, leave. We will not defund police. We don't want no riots in our neighborhoods or in the streets. We respect freedom of speech. We protect what we believe. We don't want nobody dead, so please do not tread on me. In America, your freedom ain't free. In America, got soldiers dying overseas. So America,